Hello and welcome back. This is module 1.1.1 of History of Courts from the second year BA LLB course of Mumbai University. We are going to cover the first topic, that is the period from 1600 to 1726. This was when the courts evolved in British India. The period from 1600 to 1726 marks the earliest phase of evolution of the Indian judicial system under the English East India Company. What began as a commercial enterprise gradually transformed into an administrative and judicial authority. This era laid the foundation for the modern Indian judiciary. Establishment of the East India Company by a royal charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I on 31st of December 1600. Key provisions include the monopoly to trade with the East, authority to make rules for governance of its employees. For its protection, it was permitted to maintain armed forces. For any breach of discipline, the company had the power to punish its servants. What was its significance? The charter did not aim to create courts in India, but indirectly gave the company quasi-governmental powers, which were the basis for later judicial functions. The company established its factories in Surat first. This was in 1612. Madras factory came in at 1639. In 1668, Bombay factory was set up, and in 1690, Calcutta factory was set up. So all factories were set up before the end of 1700. At each factory, the president or the governor and council acted as judges, and these courts decided on minor civil disputes, any disciplinary matters which involved company servants, and simple criminal offences. Around the company's settlements, English and Indian populations grew, and because of that, disputes became more complex, requiring formal courts. What was the need for the company to assume judicial functions? There were several factors. The commercial disputes increased. The company servants and local inhabitants came in direct conflict. There was no defined authority or uniform law. For overseas settlements and to maintain order, there was pressure from the British Crown. Also, there was need for legitimacy in dealing with native populations or local populations. These were the reasons for the company to assume judicial functions. Let us look at the judicial system in Madras. Madras became an important administrative center. Although the first Mayor Court was established in 1726, there was a previous Mayor's Court of 1687 under the Charter of James II. Although this is not relevant for our exam point of view, but earlier in this Mayor's Court, there was one mayor and 12 aldermen. Of these 12 aldermen, 3 were English, 9 from other nationalities like Portuguese, Armenians, etc. What was the jurisdiction of the Mayor's Court? It handled civil and criminal matters which involved British subjects in Madras. It had the power to adjudicate or try civil suits of all residents. Criminal matters were handled with limitations. That is, the serious offences were referred to the governor and council. What was the importance of this Mayor's Court? It was the first attempt to create an English-style court in India. But there were a lot of limitations and drawbacks. There were the inexperienced judges of the Mayor's Court. Also, the governor interfered in the Mayor's Court, and the judges lacked legal training. This led to the introduction of the Charter of 1726. Let us look at the judicial system in Bombay. The company was given Bombay by the British Crown in 1668. A court of judicature was created in 1672 by Governor Ongar. The appellate authority was also governor and council only. Its jurisdiction include civil and criminal matters. It applied English law for Englishmen and local customs for Indian inhabitants. Its weaknesses included confusion about the applicable laws, also interference from the executive, that is the governor and council, and again here too the judges lacked experience and training. Now let us look at Bengal or Calcutta and the need for reform. Calcutta was established in 1690 by Job Carnock. There were informal courts in Calcutta or Bengal at that time. There were zamindari courts for local disputes. Revenue matters were handled by the collector's court, and maritime disputes were handled by Admiralty Court in 1683. Now let us look at the problems that were being faced in Bengal. There was the problem of overlapping jurisdictions. There were complaints of corruption. Also, there was conflict between the Indians and the Indian laws and the English legal systems. So there was a need felt by the Crown for a uniform and formal judicial structure. This led us to the Charter of 1726, which was the turning point. Now this charter was issued by King George I, and it is considered the most important legal development of this period. Now, why was this Charter of 1726 issued? There was a demand for uniformity in all the three presidency towns of Bombay, Calcutta and Bengal. Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. The previous courts failed. Also, there was no appellate structure. The population was growing, the trade was growing. So all of these demanded a uniformity in the application of justice. Now let us look at the main provisions of the 1726 Charter. First, the Mayor's Court was to be established in all three presidencies of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. It composed of a mayor and 9 aldermen. Earlier, there was a mayor and 12 aldermen. Now, there was 1 mayor and 9 aldermen. And these aldermen held office for life. And 3 of them had to be British. It handled civil courts. It was basically a civil court for the local inhabitants. It had limited criminal powers, and the appeals went to the Governor and Council and thereafter to the Privy Council in England. So this was the structure of appeals. There was also Court of Quarter Sessions. This Court of Quarter Sessions was created for criminal matters, and it was presided over by the Justices of Peace. The members of this court included the Governor and its members. English law was applied through the Mayor's Court. First, it was applied only to British subjects. For the Indians, it was partial unless it was contrary to their customs. Now, let us look at what kind of status was given through this Mayor's Court in all the three presidency towns. Madras, Bombay and Calcutta were granted the status of corporate towns. So basically, they could do administration, local administration, collect taxes and do governance. What was the significance of this 1726 Charter? First step towards uniformity or uniform judicial system in India. It introduced appeals or appellate hierarchy, that is, from the mayor's court to the governor in council, and further appeals lay to the king in council or privy council in England. It strengthened the authority of the courts. Also, it led to later reforms of 1753 and 1774. It marked the beginning of the Anglicization of Indian legal institutions, that is, English laws were introduced. So, this period of 1600 to 1726, it represented the earliest phase of judicial evolution in British India. So, initially, the company set up factories, then courts, and thereafter it structured into mayor's court under the Charter of 1726. Let us look at few question answers. When was the East India Company established? It was established in 1600 by Queen Elizabeth I under the Royal Charter. What were factory courts? These were informal courts in the early company settlements where the president or the governor and council decided disputes of company servants and the local inhabitants. Which was the first mayor's court in India? Madras Mayor's Court, established in 1687, was the first mayor's court in India. What is the main aim of the Charter of 1726? So the main purpose of the Charter of 1726 was to establish a uniform system of courts in Presidency towns and create an appellate structure, important. Create an appellate structure and uniform system of courts. Which court was the highest appellate authority under the 1726 Charter? The Privy Council in England, or also known as King in Council, was the highest appellate authority under the 1726 Charter. So for long questions, we have to write. Let us understand the first question. Discuss the judicial development in the three presidency towns before the Charter of 1726. So we have to talk about the judicial setups in Madras. That is the first mayor's court, which was set up in 1687 in Madras. Then Court of Judicature of 1672 in Bombay, and Zamindari Court and Admiralty Court in Calcutta, which of course lacked uniformity. Explain the main provisions and significance of the Charter of 1726. Here we have to talk about the creation of mayor's courts, criminal courts, appellate jurisdiction, introduction of English law, the corporate status given to the three presidency towns, and the overall impact. Question number 3. Trace the evolution of the judicial system from 1600 to 1726. Here we have to talk about how the company was established through the Charter of 1600 by Queen Elizabeth I, the setting up of factory and the factory courts, the presidency settlements, the Mayor's Court of Madras, the Court of Judicature of Bombay, and the Zamindari courts and the Admiralty courts of Bengal, and why there was a need for reforms, which led to the Charter of 1726. Let us look at the mind map quickly. East India Company was set up in 1600 through Royal Charter, which gave it the trading rights. It also had quasi-governmental powers. There was a lot of growth in terms of trade and population in these settlements, which led to judicial problems and a need for reform. This was the earliest judicial arrangement wherein there were factory courts set up in Surat, Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. Now, this judicial problems and the need for reform led to the setup of different courts. In Madras, in 1687, Mayor's Court was set up. In Bombay, in 1672, Court of Judicature was set up. And in Calcutta, in 1690, Admiralty plus Zamindari courts were set up. The system was very ineffective and there was pressure for uniformity, which led to the Charter of 1726. In the Charter of 1726, Mayor's courts were set up in all the three Presidency towns. It was a civil court and limited criminal jurisdiction. It also had appeal structure, and English law was introduced in the Charter of 1726. Mayor's courts were the foundation for the modern Indian judiciary. So this is a very important aspect of the Mayor's Court. So just to summarize quickly again, East India Company was established in 1600, which was the starting point of the British legal influence. Early settlements were in Surat, Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. The courts were basically factory courts which were handled by the governor and council or the presidents of that settlement. The Madras's Mayor's Court of 1687 was the first English-style court in India, which had 12 aldermen and a mayor. The Court of Judicature of 1672 was set up in Bombay. It applied English law to British subjects. Calcutta had Admiralty Court set up in 1683, which handled maritime jurisdiction, and this Admiralty Court was set up due to increasing judicial conflicts in the town. Also, there was a need for uniformity, which led to the Charter of 1726. The highlights of 1726 was the Mayor's Court was set up in Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. There is a Court of Quarter Sessions, which was basically a criminal court. Appeals lay to the governor and council and thereafter to Privy Council. English law was introduced and the towns were given the status of corporations. This was the first uniform judicial system in India. It was the foundation for Supreme Courts of 1774 and High Court of 1862. This was also the beginning of the formal British administration of justice. Thank you very much for listening through. Take care and bye-bye.